Hello, welcome to the Potomac View. I'm your host, Nicole from Washington, D.C. The Potomac View is a brand new program seeking to provide some clarity to this confused world, especially on the subjects that the Chinese Communist Party seeks to control and influence. One of the most important confusions that CCP wants to create is rolling the CCP and the Chinese people into one inseparable idea. It's a false narrative and cannot be further away from the truth. Equating the CCP to the Chinese people is like equating the Taliban to the Afghans. The Afghans are the victims of Taliban, a terrorist organization. The Chinese people are the victims of the CCP, a cult criminal organization. The last thing the Afghans want is for the international community to associate them with the Taliban. Can you imagine the Afghan refugees who fled the Taliban for America only to find themselves becoming a target of racial profiling? Unimaginable. But this is exactly what the Chinese dissidents are facing in this country, thanks to the work of an Emmy Award-winning reporter from Vice HBO. This reporter's name is Isabel Yang. Her meteoric rise to the stardom in the TV industry began with the CCTV, the most prominent mouthpiece of the Chinese Communist Party. The CCTV reports directly to the CCP's propaganda department and is responsible for producing contents that incites hate and violence against the target groups in order to justify the whole of society approach to crackdown and suppression. We all know the role of propaganda in Nazi Germany's killing of 6 million European Jews in the Holocaust. Nazi propaganda shaped the German public's belief and attitudes toward Jews, incited hate and tolerance of violence against them, built the public apathy and acceptance of the persecution. In Nazi Germany's propaganda, Jews were often portrayed as engaged in the conspiracy to subvert the Western power. Here is an image of Jews in Nazi propaganda, hiding behind the American flag with the communist flag on the side. The caption reads, "Behind the enemy powers, the Jew." The stereotype image of Jews was the enemy of the West. They were excluded from the national community because they were considered a threat to society. Such a powerful propaganda turned countless ordinary German citizens into accomplices in the hate crime and mass murder of the 6 million European Jews. It's a history that should have never been allowed to repeat. But history is repeating right now, under our watch, right here in America. This time, the propaganda is produced by a British reporter employed by an American media. And their target is the Chinese dissidents who stood up to the world's most powerful dictatorship. In one of my previous episodes, I shared my personal experience with Vice reporter Isabel Yang and a hate piece that she produced to slander Mao Squaw, the most formidable enemy of the CCP. Yang's work portrayed Mao Squaw as a conspiracy theorist, spreading misinformation that led to tens of thousands of Chinese people gathering at the U.S. Capitol to provoke violence and lawlessness. The hit piece also portrayed myself and many Chinese Americans as rioters who were engaged in a conspiracy, an assault of law and order, along with those who stormed the Capitol Hill on January 6, 2021. History repeats with a striking similarity. Racial profiling of the target group as engaged in a conspiracy to assault and subvert the Western society. Vice propaganda didn't stop here. Weeks after, on January 9, 2022, Vice released another video on YouTube titled, "Why Some Chinese Dissidents Love QAnon." It's a 7+ minute program dedicated to singling out the Chinese dissidents for the connection with QAnon that led to the January 6 riots at the U.S. Capitol Hill. The program featured 2 female Chinese dissidents, Jane Jing and Wang Jing, a former Chinese journalist seeking asylum in the U.S. Isabel Yang called them a paradox, in which people who fought for freedom and democracy in China are in America getting behind the movement that would seem to undermine the same ideas. What Isabel Yang was emphasizing is that these 2 anti-CCP Chinese are undermining freedom and democracy in the U.S. The program also singled out 2 Chinese dissident-founded media outlets, Newtown Dynasty NTD and the Epoch Times, and labeled them as spreaders of misinformation. In the video, the Epoch Times was labeled the web of lies spun around the CCP virus. NTD was labeled as a far-right media for covering the election fraud in 2020. Both media outlets are founded by the Falun Gong practitioners who have been persecuted by the CCP for over 2 decades. The program painted the Chinese dissidents as a far-right wingers engaged in a conspiracy that led to the insurrection on January 6 at the Capitol Hill. Many of them experienced the freedom of assembly without fear for the very first time in their lifetime. But Isabel Yang labeled them as rioters who assaulted law and order in the US. Let's take a look at some postings in the comment section of the YouTube channel. You can see racially charged comments mocking and slandering the Chinese dissidents, calling them lunatic, crazy, stupid, caught. A comment says, "Chinese believe in dragons. Send this woman to Afghanistan." Another comment says, "Deport her." Some even refresh the idea of the Chinese Exclusion Act, the first and only law that excluded all members of a specific ethnic or national group from immigrating to the US. The Chinese Exclusion Act was a US federal law signed by President Chester Arthur in 1882 and only repealed in 1943. Passage of the Chinese Exclusion Act was preceded by anti-Chinese violence. 80 years ago, Nazi Germany's propaganda led to the killing of the 6 million European Jews, and the entire German society became complicit in it.